Hello everyone. My name is Darrow Brown. It's Darrow like arrow, nothing fancy. I am the assistant director for a division called Workforce Support and Wellbeing, which is the home of the Washington State Employee Assistance Program at the Department of Enterprise Services, an agency at the state of Washington. And I will be walking through the Employee Assistance Program services, maybe do a little bit of screen demo when we get to the work life piece. And again, like Jessica said, I'm happy to answer questions towards the end of the presentation. All right, quickly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but I think it's helpful to remember that Washington State EAP, at the time of this slide, which was 2 years ago, it was 50 years of service. So now we're 52 years of service. We are a local team, meaning that the employees of Washington State Employee Assistance Program and the Department of Enterprise Services, we are local. We are in Washington, and we are public employees. And our goal is to serve those who are in public service. So we service state agencies, we service public higher ed, K through 12, but those sorts of organizations that are in public service. And we support thus public employees and their household family members. The goal is really to help people identify and resolve problems that may be of personal nature, they may be of a professional nature. And my philosophy is, and the EAP's philosophy is, really we are a place where you can bring a concern, bring a problem, bring an issue. And our goal is to help you get connected to the resources, the people, places, and things that make sense for you. We might not be exactly where you need to land, but our goal is to help you land in the right place. Quick facts. Our model, we are primarily a virtual enterprise, a virtual program, and that really became the way it looked starting March 13th of 2020. We are slowly moving more towards in-person work. And I'll explain a little bit about what that means because of how we're structured. But we do have network providers that were contracted with the provider services, as well as internal staff. And the network providers, they're not our employees. So we're not able to say, you must see people in person, or you must do that. So network providers do vary in their approach. Some people are seeing people in person. Some people are doing a bit of a hybrid approach, and some people are seeing people just strictly through telehealth. Our main office is in Olympia on State Avenue. Our core hours, this is squishy, but 7:30 to 5:30 p.m. is when the internal staff tend to be in the office. And I say in the office, perhaps with quotes around it, but at their desks, at their computers, at their workstation. But we are a 24/7 support organization. So we have before, during, and after hour support for urgent or crisis situations. And you'll see our website, eap.wa.gov, which you can get to or go through UW's Work Life. And our main number is there, 877-313-4455. A little bit about how we're structured. So we have EAP staff who provide the program management, the daily operations, the operational support, and also internally we have education and awareness staff that help with presentations, webinars, etc. We also have EAP clinical staff. Those are our licensed counselors, master's level licensed intake counselors and EAP counselors, and they do the other sort of more clinical work around counseling and assessment and doing intakes. We do management consultations. We provide on-call service and critical incident response. But those EAP clinical staff, that's their primary task. And then we also manage our own provider network. Similar to an insurance, healthcare company or insurance company that has people that join the insurance network and they manage that insurance network or that network of providers. We have our provider network, which we contract with, who also provides the assessment, the counseling service, provides referrals and resources. So you may encounter an EAP employee, whether that's staff or clinical staff, or you may also encounter one of our network providers. I broke out our services in a couple of ways, knowing that the focus of this particular presentation is around employees and families. So for employees and families, the core services, the main services that I think of are one, the bread and butter of EAPs, which is intake, assessment, and short-term counseling and referrals. That's primarily what people are often coming to EAPs for is, I have a problem, I have a situation, I need to get connected to resources, I need to get connected to support, and I have a problem that I'm trying to solve. I'm looking for some support and solutions. Our other service I'll talk about is the 24/7, 365 support. We have awareness and education, which is our webinars and presentations. We use the same words, work-life. So we have work-life resources that I'll do probably a demo of around legal services, financial consultation, and other sorts of services. We do organizational consultation, but really I should have moved that down. Actually, I duplicated it. It should be really under supervisors, managers, and HR, and the critical incident response. But those are, I won't focus on those in this presentation. Those are more around supervisors, HR, managers, etc. But I will walk through the other ones for you. So intake assessment, short-term counseling, and referrals. This often just falls under the heading of counseling, but I think sometimes it's helpful to break out what those different components of counseling actually mean. So it's important to remember, and you probably know this already from your experience with the previous EAP, is that the idea is primarily EAPs are designed for solution-focused problem identification, clarifying a problem, and doing some problem solving. It's not generally for the EAP portion of the services, not generally thought of as a long-term, week after week, month after month solution. The idea is you're going to meet with someone for some sort of short-term assessment and referral, and maybe stay connected to that person outside of the EAP services. But initially, you're coming to the EAP in sort of a short-term way. We extend the benefit to employees and household family members, including dependents. We offer up to 3 sessions per issue. And I know that probably sounds a bit squishy, and perhaps it's squishy on purpose. We don't have a limit to the number of sessions in a given year, for instance, or the number of times you can come to us in a year. The idea is it's per issue. So you might come to us with a concern that's around work, for instance, and then you might then have a concern that's related to your mental health or a family mental health family member's mental health. It's a separate issue. So the idea is you come to us, you have 3 sessions per issue. But we don't tend to, in my 3 years that I've been at the EAP, we haven't denied anyone sessions. But the idea is we're trying to focus on the issue at hand. If you have another one, then you come back to us. The primary interaction, the primary way of initiating the service is through an online intake form, and I will explain more about that. You have the ability to self-schedule for intake appointments. That's one of the first steps in the process, is talking to an intake counselor. And what we try to do is offer appointments that you can then select on your own, and choose dates and times that make sense for your schedule. Intake sessions are with master's level EAP intake counselors, and I should say master's level, meaning they've graduated from grad school and have a master's in counseling or social work or family counseling, and they're also licensed. I think that's the part that I should have put in there. They've also taken their tests, done their hours, and they're also licensed professionals. We tend to screen for risk using evidence-based assessment tools. So people that might come to us with signs, symptoms of depression or anxiety or at-risk drinking, the goal is to use some evidence-based tools to sort of tease out what's happening, and then help make some decent clinical referrals. And thus again, our goal is referrals and resources, helping people get connected to the person, place, or things that make sense to them. This is a short list of the types of things that you can bring to the EAP. What I generally say to folks is, if you've got a thing, then it can be appropriate for the EAP to help with that thing. The idea, though, is that we might not be the place where you land, but our goal, again, is to help you land in the right place. So this is an example of the types of concerns. So they could be around life changes or work changes. They could be related to stress or anxiety or grief and loss. They could be about interpersonal relationships at work. Maybe there's a source of conflict, trying to figure out how to work through it. Maybe you have some emerging concerns about your smoking or your drinking or thoughts of self-harm. Whatever it is, the idea is that you can bring those sorts of issues to us. And the goal is to provide you the support that you need. So what to expect? It's helpful, I think, to understand when I do this thing, what's going to happen? When I interact with you, what should I expect in this interaction? So the way, for instance, to start the counseling piece is really to submit an intake form online. It's a fairly quick form. It does ask some questions around demographics and what brings you in and what your phone number is and those sorts of things. But the idea is to capture some information. It allows you to sign consent, allows you to see what the privacy practices are. Then you submit that form. And what happens on the back end, I'm not sure if I have a slide for that back end piece or not. What happens on the back end, I do, is that we get the intake and then we send you an email that links you to our calendar and allows you to self-schedule your intake appointment. And you're presented with dates and times that you can choose. The idea is that you'll then speak to an EAP intake counselor who will, again, help sort of tease out, help understand what the presenting issue is, what the concern is. And then through that, the idea is to it will depend on what the concern is, but the two general paths are, one, either being scheduled with one of our staff counselors or referral to a network provider, but somehow getting you connected to someone that can provide the 3-session counseling model. And again, sometimes the way in which we choose whether you're going to staff counselor or to a network provider sort of depends on what the situation is. Our staff counselors, for instance, have really great expertise around the workplace and workplace concerns, and sometimes they're a more logical fit, but sometimes the idea is we're referring to a network provider because you might have a concern that indicates this might be a longer term issue. Want to get this person connected to a network provider that matches their criteria, whether that be race or specialty of interest, or whether they're seeing someone virtually or in person or whatever. But the goal is to get you connected as much as we can to someone that matches your criteria. And then the idea is once you've gotten that referral or you're scheduled with the staff counselor is to meet with that staff counselor or network provider for up to 3 sessions per issue. I want to make sure that people understand that it's not just three sessions per year. I broke out the steps, those previous steps in a different way, just to let you know in a different way what the steps are. They're fairly easy. And Jessica, you can tell me whether you want me to do a show and tell at this point. I certainly can. I'll wait for you to let me know what you want to do there.
Yeah, I think that we can move through the presentation, and hopefully when we do the online
Okay.
website review, then that'll be a good time to show this
Awesome.
intake form where that's
Okay.
at.
So here are the steps again. I've already sort of described them, but essentially you go to the eap.wa.gov website. There's an employee portal that you'll go to. You'll submit your intake form, and then essentially we take it from there. We get your intake. We reach out to you for you to schedule your intake date and a date and time, and then we meet with you for that first time and help you understand. You help us understand what brings you in, and then we help you get connected to resources.
Sarah, do you have a sense of the timeline for that process?
Sure. So I'll go back, and that might be helpful. So submitting the intake form online, that takes maybe 15 minutes to fill out the form. We'll get the form on the same day, and depending on the time of day, you'll probably get your link to the calendar the same day, probably within a couple of hours. And then you'll self-schedule your appointment. We typically have appointments available within 2 to 3 business days. It sort of depends on where we are in the busyness of the year. We've noticed, for instance, October and November get particularly busy. So sometimes intake appointments are 4 to 5 days. And then the summer, especially the end of July and August, sometimes people get appointments within a day. So it does vary, but I would say 2 to 3 days is generally what you can see available ahead of time.
And if people don't want to submit the online intake form, can they call in and get help over the phone?
They can. So if we certainly have people who need some extra assistance in filling out the form, then yes, they can call the main number and then get some assistance on filling out the form. So yes, that's always an option, is to call. Let's see, where was that? So self-schedule the appointment. You'll speak to an intake counselor. So again, that's within that 2 to 3 day window. And then there's a process embedded between steps 3 and 4. So let's say that the referral is to a staff counselor. Think of that as where you're referring to an employee and we have access to the staff counselor schedules. It's pretty easy to oh, here's the appointment, here's the availability. I'm looking in Outlook and I see they're available. And again, most of our counselors have something available within 3 to 5 business days. There's a little bit of a process in terms of the referral piece to the network provider. The referral piece to the network provider involves the intake counselor you met with is doing the search for you, which is different than some EAPs where they essentially hand you a list and say, here are all the people that might be available in our network. You call them and you reach out. But we are the ones that do the searching, the finding, and making sure that someone's available. So then we'll reach out to the provider that we've identified. The provider, by contract, is expected to respond within 2 business days with their availability. Once they accept the referral, then their charge is to reach out to you within that time frame. And then the timing depends on your availability and the provider's availability. Contractually, what we ask of our providers is they be able to offer an appointment within 7 business days of the outreach to you. I will be totally transparent and say that the behavioral health and mental health field has become quite burdened since the pandemic. And my sense of the timing is that it's more around 10 to 14 business days before you see your counselor. I know that sounds like a long time. I have teens, and I'm quite transparent to say that I also see a therapist, and 2 weeks isn't really that bad compared to what I've experienced in finding resources at times through insurance networks. But I would expect it to be from the time that the provider reaches out to you, while contractually we're asking them to provide an appointment within 7 days. I do know that the way things are working recently is it's taking about 10 to 14 days before you have your first appointment, which leads me to the piece around the 24/7 support. One of the things that I've encountered in my time at this EAP and all EAPs, I've been in the EAP world for about 14 years, is the reminder to people that when things are acute, when you need to speak to someone sooner than later, it's helpful to remember that there's 24/7, 365-day support. So I often encourage people to use the 24/7 support as a bridge if you've got an appointment that is out for some period of time, sort of out on the calendar for some period of time, and you're sort of feeling acute, like I've got to talk to someone right now. I can't wait 2 weeks for that first appointment. So our 24/7 support is available to all covered employees and family household members. And we often call it the crisis line. I like to remind people that you don't have to be in crisis. Crisis is a heightened state where people are feeling overwhelmed. It's almost an emergency. Maybe they're having thoughts of self-harm. I think of the 24/7 support as also just maybe slightly below crisis level. And you can call and speak to our 24/7 support no matter the time of day, including weekends and holidays. The way in which you do that is you call our main number, which is 877-313-4455. If one of the staff if our staff are already on calls, then what you might get is our phone system greeting. And in that greeting, it's going to say to you something like, if you want to talk to our on-call or our crisis on-call service, please press 2. When you press 2, you will be routed to our crisis or on-call service. You'll speak to, again, master's level licensed clinician who can provide you that in the moment support that you need. We get notified of all of those calls. So part of the idea is we then will follow up with that person to understand like what's happening. What does this person need? Is there a way we can get them some services sooner than later? So we are always aware of the connection that people have with our 24/7 support. And once we call you, then you can speak to us, clinical staff, about access to additional services or expedited services or somehow getting connected to someone. So please remember that while yes, the behavioral health field is experiencing quite a moment of transformation, the goal is to make sure that no matter what along the way, that you have the support that you need. Particularly when you're feeling like you're in crisis or things are feeling more acute. Part of our services, which I'll do towards the end, show you is what we also call our work-life resources. So our work-life resources include web resources. There's also all sorts of resources around online will making, do-it-yourself legal forms, financial calculators, other resources to help you find childcare, elder care, etc. But those web-based resources are out there in the Work Life portal. The two, often the primary services around Work Life are around legal assistance, where you get free legal advice from an attorney, a licensed, obviously attorney, by phone. It's not in person. Where you can discuss your situation. You get referrals to a local attorney for a free 30-minute consultation. Often it comes with discounted rates for ongoing services as needed, but that's one of the core things about the legal assistance. And the financial counseling is similar. These are not investment advisors. I want to make that distinction clear. They are certainly experts in the financial world, but their goal is not as investment advisors. They don't have products to sell. They're not there to sell you on signing up for something, but they are there to help you get your finances in order, to help you with monthly budgeting, to provide advice about how to get connected to other financial resources, focused on things like improving your credit score, reducing debt, those sorts of things, but they are not investment advisors. I just put this screen up. I'm going to do a little bit of a demo, but I just put the screen up to say that the way in which you access our work-life resources is through an organization code. And often employees from our various customers will say, well, what's my organization code? It's usually pretty simple. And in this case, the organization code that you're going to put in is just UW for University of Washington. I guarantee that there'll be someone that will forget that. But it's totally fine to call us and say, what is my organization code? If you don't know it, then usually someone in your human resources area probably knows it as well.
And we have it posted on our webpage too.
Good. Awesome. Again, some of this I'll show more as demo than just a slide. So, but we have awareness and education as a service. One of the things we do is we provide what we call webinars, and we make that distinction from the word presentation. A webinar is sort of our come one, come all to a topic that we have, we are presenting to what we call the enterprise. The enterprise for us is all state agencies and all of our sort of contracted customers. So these are live, they're on, and we have them live. We also record them and they're on demand. You'll see some on our website. But the idea is this is a come one, come all on a topic. Where one of our most recent ones, for instance, was around burnout. We've done stress management, we've done resilience and self-care, but these are typically designed and developed by us and presented by us on a variety of topics. On our website, you're going to find various resources around suicide prevention, grief and loss. We are, after the George Floyd murder back in June of 2020, we set up a really comprehensive racism and mental health page that has some excellent resources on it. We provide resource guides, and I will show you those. But as things happen in the world, whether it be mass shootings or civil unrest or something that's happening out in the world, or at least maybe in Washington State, what we try to do is we try to stand up resource guides that are related to that topic to help people understand what are the resources that I can go to and use that are out there out there, meaning local, county, statewide, nationwide. What are the resources that I can use that can help me deal with whatever this particular situation is? For instance, we have one for anti-Asian Pacific Islander violence, because that was certainly a rising and continues to be a rising issue in our community. And we stood up a resource guide just to help people understand what are the ways in which I can get support and support for my family during these times. And we also have supervisor tools that, I have a different presentation tomorrow for managers and HR related to supervisor tools. We do a monthly publication. We have an employee newsletter and a supervisor newsletter. You can subscribe to those. And again, they're very topical. Topic changes each month about what we're focused on. But you can subscribe to those, and then they come usually around the first week of the month. Except July and August, where we're doing a July-August issue. So you'll see July and August, and then the next one won't be until September. And then we also have our brochures and flyers online. I'm just taking a screen grab of one of our resources, which is around suicide prevention and intervention. Unfortunately, but luckily it's there. This is an often used resource, particularly for coworkers who are trying to support someone and get support for themselves around an employee that might be expressing thoughts of self-harm. This is a great resource, obviously, for those that are having those experiences, and also a helpful resource for managers and HR who need some immediate guidance of what do I do when someone that I'm that I'm supporting, someone I'm working with, or someone that's a direct report, is experiencing and talking about these things, how can I make sure that that person gets the support they need? This is a screenshot, but I can navigate through the real one on the web as we conclude.